Let me do the Ted Cruz. When I do the Ted Cruz, you guys boo. So summarizing the RNC on this third night.
Endorse Trump.
I need you to
Endorse Trump.
vote your conscience.
Endorse Trump.
And I love freedom. And I'm for
Endorse Trump.
principles.
You're awful, H. You're made of wax.
I gotta go. They're kicking me out. They're kicking me out. You see, I combined Ted Cruz and Jack.
Yes, that's nice. Come on, give me a break.
Okay. So the night before Ted Cruz's speech was the dullest hour and a half of my life. Okay. Not of just any convention, not of any political moment, of my life. Okay. Okay. Now, then Ted Cruz came out, and we're like, okay, standard smarmy Ted Cruz speech with this and the. He looks like a Madame Tussauds wax version of himself, right? And so, but then all of a sudden we're like, wait a minute now, when's he going to get to endorsing Trump? Like, I got a freedom, blah, 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 freedom, constitutional, blah, 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 Second Amendment, blah, 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 right?
Dead little girl.
I hate the IRS and emotional pandering and all this stuff, right? And then we hear the crowd start saying, endorse Trump, endorse Trump. We're like,
Yep.
Dance monkey.
But you know what? That's the kind of reality television, old school WWE, that only Trump can bring you. You see, maybe it was a genius move letting Ted Cruz speak and be the heel.
Yeah.
Okay,
He should have come out and said, Cleveland sucks.
Oh yeah, I know, right? Like,
Tone blows.
he's a full-blown heel. So anyway, to summarize Ted Cruz, which we talked about earlier, so then the crowd's getting antsy, and he says, you know, I like your enthusiasm, New York, because it was the New York delegation that started the endorse Trump chant. And then at the end, I thought, yeah, but he's going to say, and, you know, Trump. I mean, like, small, a little bit, show. You know, and not like, I endorse full-heartedly, full-throatedly Donald Trump. You know, but, you know, you got to be Clinton. No, and he said, you know, you vote your conscience on
Which is
whoever
the
opposed the
opposite.
Constitution
Yeah,
better, right?
yeah.
Which is definitely the opposite. But then Newt Gingrich tried to fix that later, which we'll get to in a second. And then the crowd booed
They booed for a while.
Ted Cruz off the stage. I haven't seen that ever at a convention. And that was an amazing moment. So then Newt Gingrich comes out later and he's like, well, what Ted was trying to say.
Yeah.
Right? He's like,
By definition, only Trump.
yeah, and so anyone who's going to uphold the Constitution, well, that's only Donald Trump, right? Are you with me? And everybody's like, no, not really. Yeah. And then, you know, he tried to spin it like Ted Cruz was actually endorsing Donald Trump, but he most certainly was not. So that's the giant story of the day. And then I always enjoy Callista and Newt Gingrich combo. like no other two-bit player. Like, he's not the VP. He's not anything, right?
Yeah.
Insists that their wife introduced them. And then afterwards talks about, oh, she's great at knitting and kite
But
making.
that was the most
plays the
amazing
French
part
horn.
about Newt Gingrich's speech, because right before he came on, Cenk was talking about how much he's whipped by his wife and how, you know, there was an article that came out during the 2012 election that talked about how he's whipped by his wife. And then he comes out and the first thing he does is spend at least 2 minutes just talking about how lovely his wife is.
And she plays, plays the French horn. She's like documentary filmmaker. I'm like, oh, yeah, I know. She's the next Alex Gibney over there. Okay. So, and then like random stuff about her. And back when she was 12, she once got an A out of paper in English class.
Considering how much hatred, fear-mongering we've experienced during this convention, I don't know, it was kind of nice to get a little love, you know, a little positivity.
No,
Look,
I got that sense later from Mike Pence and his mom and his wife, yada, yada. But with Newt Gingrich, I always picture him with, as I was said during the live coverage, with a gag ball. like
Because you...
No, you're great. You're great at the great. No, you documentary films are fantastic.
Best mistress ever.
Whatever. He likes his wife. That's okay.
Yeah.
No, there's liking your wife, and then there's being forced to like your wife.
No, I don't think that's the case. That's unfair.
Otherwise, there will be punishment. You know
All
where
right,
you go.
okay.
Something about trips to Tiffany's or
Maybe he's
something
into
like
that kind of punishment.
No, I think he is,
Yeah,
though.
that's-
I
Okay,
think
then he
that's
loves his
what-
wife.
That's it.
She gives him what he wants.
Yeah. That's right.
That ain't right.
Calista, I know I've been a little bit of a bad boy. Okay, anyway. All right. Random. Okay. So Newt Gingrich tries to get things back on track. He gives a pseudo-intellectual speech where he says 60 million Pakistanis are going to come to kill you. Okay, but I did math on it. It's 9% of Pakistan. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, he did the math.
Right, yeah. And he says, I mean, the Muslims, they're good. They're good people. I mean, but we should consider nuking them because about one morning we could wake up and 300,000 of us could be dead. So we're back to the mushroom clouds like, oh, we got to invade
Yes.
Iraq. 'cause
Except
we could-
important, we said this during it. It was that we had the whole mushroom cloud thing back in the time of Iraq, but it was always that there's a particular regime, and that regime could nuke us, or they give a nuke to a terrorist group. Now it's Muslims. All Muslims. Millions of Muslims. Literally 16 million in one country. Any one of them could kill 300,000 people. And while Bush and Cheney fearmongered, and they even ratcheted up code red, code orange, and it was always, we were right before the end of the world, they never told you have to fear every member of an entire world religion.
And I can't
everywhere
bel-
you go, you should be scared of that 1.6 billion people.
Yeah, and I can't believe I'm going to give Dick Cheney a little bit of credit here, but they've gotten so over the top that Dick Cheney seems soft by comparison because Dick Cheney has said, no, it is a really bad idea to talk about Muslims in general or
Yeah.
to even get into these waters of profiling Muslims, etc.
And the Bushes
Yeah.
are the same.
Partly because Dick Cheney knows if you want more wars, you need Muslim allies.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly,
We
exactly.
need the Muslims on our side to help defeat ISIS.
So, look, Cheney was a bad person, but he wasn't dumb, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And
He was an
what-
evil genius.
He was
Yeah.
an evil
He'll
genius.
shoot you
That's
in
the
the
best
face with
way
a
to
shotgun,
explain who he was. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Describe
Whereas
him.
these guys are evil dummies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
What do you think I am, a meathead?
That's what Trump said today.
Yeah, I think you're a
But-
meathead.
Yeah, unbelievable.
These
Okay.
guys are evil
so,
dummies.
And so then finally Mike Pence
These
comes
guys
out
are evil
and
dummies.
and Mike Pence gave all of a sudden we were in a time warp. We all entered a hot tub time machine. And we were back in the 1980s. And it was the most standard convention speech I have ever seen. I think solid. Like, you know, I give the guy credit. He had good emotional appeals without being over the top and maudlin and like fear-mongering like they've been doing the last two nights. He didn't do that. He's like, oh, there's my mom. It was a nice moment. He hokey, folksy, Indiana talk.
Yeah,
Many of you
talks about
probably
the
know who I
cornfield
am.
in his
Yeah.
backyard.
And then he attacked the Democrats, but on policies.
Yes.
So he's the only one out of all three nights that talked about any policy at all. He went back to the coal. You know, we got to get more coal. We got to make America
Yeah.
coal again.
But at
more
least
whale
it's a
oil.
policy.
Yeah, that's a policy. But then he went on to say the standard stuff like we believe in deregulation so that, and we believe in local government knowing better so that it empowers you. Standard Republican boilerplate stuff. So that makes you, for 1 second, be like, oh, right, that's their argument for like why the economy would be better, et cetera. Because no one else has said it for 3 goddamn days of the convention. It's unbelievable.
That's right.
And then he attacked the Democrats for over-regulating, yada, yada. It was a solid attack against Democrats, like you're supposed to do. They're running against them, right? That's fine. But he didn't, there was no moment of like, what should we do to Hillary Clinton?
There was Benghazi
Yeah.
mentions.
Yeah, there
she
were,
turned
there
her
were.
back on service
think
members.
I think a part of that was Mike Pence is just so thrilled that he can't be unhappy or mean right now.
He's thinking,
How did I end up
like,
here?
He reversed the Nancy
Yeah.
Kerrigan moment of like when she was like, "Why me? Why
Yeah,
me?"
yeah.
He's like, "Why me?
Why
me?
me?
I
Yeah.
can't believe I'm going to be president when Donald Trump puts me in charge of domestic and,
And foreign policy.
My own
Why
state,
me?
my own state hates me within 3 years.
He made a self-deprecating joke about like my dad would be so shocked I'm here, but he wasn't joking. He was serious.
He was
He's
serious.
shocked
Yeah.
he's there.
Yeah.
He's like, "I thought the kid was an evil dummy." And there he is.
And
Why
there he is.
him? Why him?
So even though his speech was mild in rhetoric and it wasn't as crazy as what we've seen, I don't want the audience to forget who he is. And I also want you to remember that Donald Trump wants a VP who is going to take over when it comes to domestic and foreign policy. That's what he was offering to Kasich, and Kasich was like, yeah, no, I don't want to be part of your administration. But Mike Pence is not a good person, okay? The anti-abortion laws that he signed are unconstitutional, according to the Supreme Court, by the way, but it would force women to bury their aborted fetuses. And if a woman is pregnant with a fetus that has been determined to have a developmental issue, like let's say Down syndrome or something like that, or that's not a developmental issue, but you know what I'm saying. You know, right now you have the choice to decide whether or not you want to keep that or bring that pregnancy to term. In Indiana, he signed a law that wouldn't allow you to make that choice. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's just one example. And I find it hilarious that right before he came on and spoke, you had Newt Gingrich talking about how terrible Muslims are to women. And look, I'm not going to say that we do terrible things like stoning women to death and some of the hideous things that you see extremists do, but Republicans are not so kind to women, okay? They do want to violate their freedoms. They do not want to support legislation that would protect them from domestic violence. And domestic violence is a huge problem in this country where men either beat these women to death or they shoot them, okay? And so just keep all those things in mind. His speech seemed mild, but his policies are beyond questionable.
But that's also old school. In the old days, Republicans would talk like they're your best friend and you could have a beer with them and everything's going to be okay. And then they take away your rights.
Yeah.
So that Pence is, that's it. It's official. It's Mike Old School Pence. Okay, you know, back at home.
No, he already has a nickname. It's Mike.
That's right. Back at home, they call him Mike. I love that somebody introduced him that way. Like, wow, that's an interesting nickname.
And then Mitch
By
kept
the
calling him
way,
Michael.
sorry to interrupt you. I also want to mention one other thing about his policies that I think is important. He mentioned his wife and how she's a school teacher, and everyone's like, "Oh, wife, school teacher, right?" I love our audience. You guys are amazing. Someone immediately tweeted me an NPR article about his education policies. So he is huge on privatizing education in the state. So he does the private school vouchers where they defund public education and then turn around and criticize it after they've defunded it because it no longer works. And then they use that money toward vouchers that people can use toward private schools. Now, some of you might say, hey, you know what? That's actually not a bad idea. It gives people choice. Except once you privatize all the schools in the country, you think that the government is going to give the disadvantaged vouchers so they can pay for private education for their kids? Hell no. Then we're going to have the same problem that we're seeing with higher education, where if you're poor and you can't afford it, you either need to take on a gigantic amount of student loan debt or you just can't go to school at all. So he is a dangerous person. Do not be fooled by his mild speech.
Anna bringing the facts.
I love it when you guys send me information.
Okay, that's
Always
why
do
that's
that.
why we're the Young Turks together. TYTnetwork.com/join.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that just real quick on that. That's what he meant when he said Donald Trump is for educational choice.
Yeah.
He meant vouchers.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
And Donald Trump Jr. Also talked about that during his speech.
Right. And Eric, let me quickly note, Eric Trump was another large speaker today, and he desperately wants to be his daddy. And so he would have hand motions like this, and then talk about, oh, we are so charitable, like my dad gave all this money to my private school so I could get in. Okay, he didn't mention that part of the charity, but in fact, that was a larger part of Donald Trump's charitable giving in the years when he kept talking about how he was giving to AIDS. Then he gave to AIDS and all the other medical research he bragged about. He gave more money in charity, not in tuition, charity to Eric Trump's school because he was such a dummy he couldn't get in on his own. So but then he bragged about, oh, we have done all these. I started a charity too. Hey, knucklehead, if somebody gave me a couple $100 million, I can start a charity too.
Yes.
But they're brazen. They all brag about how rich they are and how wonderful they are, etc. So, but finally, I think that one line by Newt Gingrich is the best summary of this entire convention. Because in the midst of his nuclear-grade fear-mongering, he said at one point, quote, every American should be terrified. I mean, there it is. This convention in a nutshell. Make America fear again. So that's what happened tonight.
Make
Nice.
America fear again.
Yep. All right. So now, I do want to do one more thing. So today, I've done a lot of interviews. I interviewed conservatives. I interviewed some progressives. I got interviewed by conservatives on talk radio, and we've been doing that for the last 3 days. And I want to tell you something about not conclusions I've drawn from that, but concerns I've drawn from that. Conclusion is too strong a word, but I'm starting to head down that direction. I think Donald Trump has a really good chance of winning this election. So why? Why do I say that? Now, first of all, Hillary Clinton had opened up a big lead when Trump got pummeled on the judge issue, this, that, the other thing, made a lot of mistakes. She got an 11-point lead. Okay, now if she can keep that, she's in good shape. Boom, she lost it immediately. Now all of a sudden it's down to about a 2.5-point lead if you take some of the old polls. If you don't take the old polls, it's down to like a 1-point lead. So a statistical tie. How did she lose 11-point lead in a matter of weeks? So I know James Comey came out and said all the things she had done wrong in the email situation, et cetera. But that's only half of it. The other half of it is, what I'm hearing from all the conservatives here is America for Americans. Now that is a little bit dangerous, and that has a fear-mongering and a hate-mongering aspect to it. But for a lot of Americans who are not sophisticated in that dog whistle stuff, some will like the dog whistle, some that don't even want that dog whistle will look at it and go, wait a minute, that makes sense. I've got all these Washington elites that have been screwing me for all these years, and here's this guy who's breaking all the rules, and who's telling it like it is, and he's saying, yeah, why don't we do things for us first? What am I going to help Syrian refugees for? Why don't you help me instead?
Yeah.
What am I going to help Mexicans coming across the border for? Why don't you help me first? Why don't you help me instead?
Yeah.
Right? And I don't have, like, everybody tells me, well, the economy is so great, but my job sucks. And my wages haven't gone up in not years, but decades, relative certainly to inflation. He's like, so why don't you help me first?
Yeah.
And so Trump is saying, right or wrong, and I think it's monumentally wrong, he's saying, I'm going to help you first.
Yeah.
And I know how to do it. I'm big boss man, and big boss man is going to help you out. And we might think that that's completely wrong and completely misleading, but it could work. It could really work.
That's the perfect example of a Hunger Games strategy. Pit frustrated people against one another, and it'll be a perfect distraction, right? And then you're able to do whatever you want. And look, what those people don't understand is, whether it's subconsciously or very consciously, if they're accepting that narrative, he is not going to help you because you're a poor American. He's not going to help you because you're not Mexican or Muslim. He has no interest in helping you. And even if he did have interest in helping you, he doesn't even know what he would do. He has no policy ideas. Again, if he did, they would be explained, they'd be talked about. It would be at least part of some of the speeches during this convention, but they haven't been. Mike Pence is the only one who, talked about policy ideas just a little bit. So just keep all that in mind.
Go ahead, John.
What bothers me about it, and you talked about it a little bit with the misleading, is that you're worried about people understanding that government is benefiting someone other than themselves, with themselves being the regular Americans. And so Trump identifies it as Syrian refugees, people abroad, even ISIS, since Obama, we know, is sympathetic towards them and helps them out. And the system is set up to benefit someone else, but it's not some fucking 8-year-old Syrian refugee. Mm-hmm. It's someone who lives down the block from Donald Trump in New York.
Exactly.
He's a rich motherfucker, and the government has been benefiting him as long as there's been America.
But Johnny,
it seems, especially in the past 50 years or so, and so that anger and that frustration is going to be channeled towards hating brown people, hating black people, hating immigrants in general, when it should be generated or should be channeled towards changing the system in a way that we don't benefit one class of Americans rather than another.
Right. So they're pitting working people against poor people.
Yes.
But Johnny, why is it that illegal immigrants come here and they're treated better than our soldiers?
But they will say
They will
that.
say
what
that.
they
They will
say.
say that, yeah.
And,
Yes.
and John, you're of course
Those
totally
two
right.
things, by the way, have nothing to do with each other.
No, there's no logical connection, and they're not the guys causing the problem. The powerful are, as John just eloquently pointed out. But it still works.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the oldest trick in the book for a reason.
Right.
You pit one another against, you pit the people against one another, and then you sneak off with the money. And Donald Trump has done that in his personal life, and he's about to do that to the country. And it could easily work.
Yeah.
And
They should have nominated Bernie.
yeah, that might have been a
nullified
smart
that
idea.
a little bit, I think.
Yeah, but look, final thing is, we just had a wonderful meta moment because we're here broadcasting live out of the RNC, and you should check out all of our coverage throughout the entire day. We covered for over 12 hours. So that's youtube.com/TYT. And there's politicians and pundits that walk by here because we're right in the middle of everything. And Gary Johnson just walked by and gave me a nice little...
That's who that was.
He said, hey, there's the man, referring to me. God bless his heart, right? We don't agree on everything, but I've given him opportunity to come on the show many times, et cetera, and make his case. The reason why I say that's an interesting meta moment is he might decide the election.
Yeah.
He's
That's
sitting at 12%.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you throw a wild card into this race, with Donald Trump in the race, making an interesting, possibly effective argument, completely, and I mean, you want to talk about a wild card. Donald Trump already is being a wild card by being unchained from the donors and giving and running in this populist way, and people are angry in the country. And then you have a third party candidate, maybe a fourth party candidate, giving us a completely different dynamic. I'm telling you right now, Donald Trump could easily win. So I'm not saying he's definitely going to. I'm not saying that he'd win by a large margin. If he does win, he'll probably squeak in, right, in a 3-4-way race. So any of those pundits on TV and the smug Democrats pretending like, oh, this election is Donald Trump. It's the best thing we could have hoped for. Hillary's going to walk away with this election. It's going to be easy. It's going to be a landslide. Don't believe the hype. This is going to be one hell of an election. All right, we are way out of time.
Way out.
And this is a nice moment at the end. Oh, if you were watching all day,
I just wanted to say, fuck you.
And I wanted to say, fuck me.
Jimmy and Ben had a little tense moment. That's why you got to watch live the whole time.
People are still chatting about it.
Well,
Yeah.
it was exciting. I'm still thinking about it.
By the way, we should probably get in front of the conspiracy theories. If after this one of them doesn't show up on the network for 3 or 4 days, doesn't mean they were fired.
So can I be heard? Well, I just suppose if I talk loudly, I can be heard. I was on BitTorrent for an hour with Michael, and somebody came up to me right before it went on, and they'd been watching at BitTorrent, right? And they were like, wow, that was amazing. And she came up, I'd never seen her before, and she gave me a hug, and she said, are you okay? And then later she said, at first I was confused because it looked like you were fighting with yourself, and I wasn't sure which one of you it was.
Well, it's nice to know that the people at BitTorrent were watching, because I know the Young Turks have been very big with file sharing people for a long time.
They're
Okay.
probably still watching.
All right, but
All right,
hey,
good night.
don't miss a minute of this coverage, man. There's some crazy shit that goes down tomorrow and at the DNC. And again, thank you for supporting us. TYTnetwork.com/join.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.